Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. Now it's Arduino week and we'll be talking a little bit about that, but especially about Arduino's new board they've just announced, the Portenta X8. That along with some projects and a bunch of other stuff on this show, so let's get on with it. So we're going to begin this show by talking about Arduino Week, which is in full flow. Now there has already been a couple of announcements from Arduino this week that we're going to talk about in a minute, but just in case you weren't aware that Arduino Week is happening, by the time you're watching this video, we're probably getting towards the community celebration that will be happening over the weekend. So just so you know, March 26th, which is Saturday, at 3 o'clock CET is the community celebration. And if you happen to be watching this video while it's happening, maybe jump over to there just so you can watch it live and then come back here later. This video, of course, will still be there for you. But yes, Arduino Week is always awesome. It's always very interesting. There's a big mix of things that's happening, but the community celebration is always the highlight for me. And of course, you can get to it by just heading to this link, which will also be in the description of the video. And also catch up with everything else that has been happening over the week. We'll actually go into more detail about all of the things from Arduino Week outside of the products in a different show. I just wanted to highlight this up top in case you weren't aware of it. I wanted to jump in and try and catch some of it live. Now, one of the announcements in Arduino Week was sort of interesting, and it actually comes back to this old idea that I guess has been around for quite a while when it comes to accessible maker and embedded boards. For the longest time, Raspberry Pi did the Linux and Arduino did the MCU side of it. If you wanted something with good documentation and a big community that was accessible to makers and people who weren't trained engineers, yeah, Arduino for the microcontrollers, Raspberry Pi for Linux. But then Raspberry Pi put out their own microcontroller that everybody loves, and now Arduino is getting into Linux boards. And the Portenta X8 is a Linux-ready board. In fact, it is an incredibly powerful Linux-ready board. As it says here, it has an industrial-grade system-on module. And the Portenta 8 is a powerful Linux-based board. As it says here, it is an industrial-grade system on module with a Linux OS preloaded on board, making it a plug-and-play solution capable of running device-independent software, thanks to its modular container architecture. Now, this isn't actually the first Linux Arduino board, if you're being technical about it. The Arduino Yun, I believe, ran a version of Linux on it, but it was a very low-powered version. This is the first board which I suppose, if you were to try and make that comparison, saying, is it like a Raspberry Pi, then this is closer to that in terms of its computing power and the way you're going to be able to run Linux on it. Now, one of the things that makes this board super interesting is that it's not just a Linux board now. It is really a crossover between what the Portenta H7 was and a completely new world, by virtue of the fact it actually has two separate system on modules now, if you want to call it that. One of them is the NXP IMX A8M Mini, which, as it says there, it's the Cortex A53 quad-core up to 1.8 gigahertz per core. But the actual thing in and of itself, that's a fairly common chip now. But it's not so common to have a board which has both that and an STM32H7 on it. So this board kind of has the best of both worlds. You're going to be able to get the microcontroller to act like a microcontroller and just dip into system tasks as and when. You're going to be able to run a real-time operating system that actually runs in real time alongside a system and slots into it with system time, which could never actually be fully real time. But yeah, there's a lot of very interesting configurations for this board, and much like the H7 as well, it might look like there isn't much in the way of I/O, but if you see this graphic here, they have these connectors on the bottom for actually breaking the board out. It has a huge amount of I/O. It's just it doesn't have the same castellated edges or pins that you'd see on another Arduino or Raspberry Pi kind of board. It says down here it's going to be available soon in the store, although actually there is a link to the store for it already. However, that link shows the board as sold out, but the price of it is 200 euros, 199 euros, which is steep. There's no getting around it. When you want to compare this to things like other microcontroller boards or the Raspberry Pi, this costs a lot more. But then again, it's a uniquely capable board, and there's a reason this is the Arduino Pro line, because they're saying, yeah, this is for professional use. If you're looking for something which is pretty much at the top of the tree for what you can do with it in terms of extensibility, speed of prototyping, not only do you have all of the hardware that this board has, but you have Arduino's documentation, which is, always known for being pretty good. So yeah, if this is something that you are going to get a hold of, please do let me know. This is way out of my price range for an impulse buy. I'd love to play with one of these, but unless someone is kind enough to send one to me and maybe even give one away, hint Arduino if you ever see this, I'm not going to be able to get my hands on this. If any of you in your work or your hobby life are, I would love to hear your experience with it, because it's such a uniquely suited board for so many tasks. So yes, the X8 is the big announcement of the new board from Arduino, but it's not the only thing that's come out from Arduino recently. Arduino are now selling a robot arm. Specifically, this robot arm. This is the Arduino Braccio++, and we're on the always wonderful CNX software for this one, just because they have a huge amount of information about it, and it saves me from going through every single small detail. I'm very time constrained on this week's show. However, in short, this is a quasi-environmentally friendly arm. The idea is that I think it's all made of recycled materials, and it is recyclable, which is a kind of nice touch when it comes to a lot of this kind of stuff. It's something we don't like to think about, but a lot of the hardware that we play with is, yeah, it's got to go in landfill when we're done with it, unless it's used by someone else. You're not going to be able to break this stuff down. Whereas this is at least made from recycled materials. I'm not sure if you could recycle it once you'd finished using it. Now, that might only be a small thing for some people, but it's a nice thought. But essentially what we have here is a robotic arm, and it comes with a carrier board with the RP Nano 2040 Connect, which is one of my favorite recent Arduino boards, actually. I've got one under the pile of mess you can't see on my desk. Yeah, it's a nice way of using the RP 2040, because of course the Pi Pico uses the RP 2040 as well, but that particular board has an IMU on it already, along with a bunch of other things, connectivity as well. And that makes it really easy to interface with. You can make a wireless, completely wireless, like Wii nunchuck kind of controller without any extra gear except a battery. That's all you need. And they're really fun boards. Anyway, this is the actual carrier board, as you can see, which has all the places to plug into the robot, and it has a little readout screen as well. So this is a really interesting idea. I really like the idea that Arduino are making a robot arm, because this is going to be something that has that Arduino shine to it. It's going to have good documentation. But they're also making this as something that is designed for teaching. So here we are. There's the robotic arm can be purchased for $599 or €499 in the Arduino store. And there's a discounted version of the old robot on the European store now, which is kind of nice that these old ones, they're not sold out yet, but the original ones are now cheaper than they were. So if you see this thing, that's amazing, but I can't really shell out €500 for my classroom, you can still get the older version of it, which I think is sort of nice. Anyway, if you are interested in this, I'll leave a link to the fantastic CNX software article in the description. It not only goes through exactly what this robot is, but if you've used the original Braccio robot, it goes through a few of the different reasons between the two, so you can sort of A/B that. But yeah, as I mentioned, the main thing for me here is just it's a robot arm which you're going to get decent documentation with, which isn't always the case with other robot arm manufacturers. And the idea that they've made that decision, which surely must have cost them money, to make this at least a quasi-environmentally friendly thing, is something that I think has quite a lot of worth. It is quite nice. So yeah, I'll leave a link to this in the description of the video. We're going to move on to a news story from this week that has quite a few elements in it. To some people, some of it might be schadenfreude, depending on how you feel about the modern commercialized Internet of Things. Some of it might hit a little bit home for you if you've accidentally bricked a device. But yes, in short, AEG/Electrolux had a bit of a gaffe this week when an over-the-air update went out to a bunch of microwave combi ovens, basically making them think that they are steam ovens and bricking them because it stopped them being able to receive more over-the-air updates. The thing itself is, again, there's a bit of schadenfreude to it. I can't help but smile a little bit because it does kind of highlight the ridiculousness of certain elements of IoT, but I do feel very heavily for the engineer involved. There's those very famous old stories of people with their hands on their head in their hands, having accidentally deleted entire Linux file systems that thousands of people rely on and stuff like that, and those stories are always very compelling as well. Anyway, let's get into it. So I reported this on Electromaker as news, but the top and bottom of it comes from this tweet in Dutch. I think this might have only affected microwaves in Amsterdam. Earlier reports said it could have been most of the microwaves across Europe, but it seems to me that isn't the case. This story's gone very quiet, unsurprisingly. But yes, I think you sent the wrong update that made my new oven unusable. This morning, no function anymore, and the F606 error message, reboot does not work, and if you want to turn off Wi-Fi, which was suddenly off, you can't turn it back on again. What's happened here is the over-the-air update has tried to write firmware for a different oven onto the firmware inside the oven, completely bricking it. And when I say completely bricking it, I mean AEG said in some earlier messages, we're trying to, we're working on fixing this as soon as possible. We hope to do this remotely. This is one of the last messages they actually put out, confirming the situation. But if you are an AEG customer with one of these microwaves, they are sending out engineers to each spot to fix it. The broader thing here, though, is the questions that this raises about IoT in general and how far consumer IoT has come and yet how fragile it is. So I'm not in a position on this show to give a lengthy opinion piece about any of this, really. I'm not an engineer. I'm just someone who looks at this kind of stuff from a distance. I've been writing about technology and, specifically the microcontrollers and the things that work with modern consumer tech for a long time. And the fact that this is AEG/Electrolux, it's a big company, it means that they were protected in a weird way because they can actually afford to take the hit and send out engineers. But by the same token, because this happened in Europe to a European company, if they didn't do that, they could get horrendously sued, I imagine. There are companies in different parts of the world that can make devices that have no support, and if something like this happens, you're just screwed. And it does beg the question, how much stuff needs to be connected to the Internet of Things? If you are going to connect a microwave to the Internet of Things, how safe is it? How easy is it for someone to, say, hack into your microwave and turn it on constantly while you're on holiday so it never turns off? How much of a fire hazard is that? On the other side of things, if you're for the idea of everything being connected, and I'm right on the fence with this, honestly, because I see the importance of having OTA, because that means that anything can be patched in at any time. It does actually give an extra level of safety, but anything that you're going to send to an OTA device has to have in its DNA, any message that can be sent out from a central server has to have the ability to reprogram it. I mean, if you're going to send an OTA, it's the first thing you learn when you learn OTA on an ESP32. If you don't include the bootloader in the package, then that's the last thing you're going to update with that without physically attaching a USB cable to it. Yeah, I don't know. I could talk about this for a very long time. I am not going to. I don't have time on the show, but I am very interested to hear what your opinions on this is. What happens when this is something bigger? What happens when Tesla accidentally bricks a planet's worth of cars? Now, that's not going to happen, but something of that scale could happen. I am a fan of the Internet of Things, but I am definitely one of those people that thinks that the Internet of Things is building an infrastructure that is sound in terms of engineering, but not in terms of humans, because humans are dumb, humans make mistakes, and yeah, I am interested to see how quickly things move compared to how much we're thinking about it. Not enough people are thinking about the long term, or at least not enough people who have influence are thinking about the long term ideas that can come from bricking a microwave. Oh, the poor guy! I can just imagine him just press the button. Oh no! If you are enjoying the Electromaker show, there's a couple of things you can do to help us. One of them is subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's free and it only takes a second to do. You can always unsubscribe later. And also, we have these notifications that you can get on YouTube now. Now, if you turn that to all, you'll get a notification just within YouTube up here where the number is. And you can see, look, these are notifications of the shows that's gone up. And the recent video from Robin, a fantastic video about microcontrollers, going through the entire range from PIC to STM32 and saying, which one do you need for a project? Robin's a fantastic engineer and can talk about things in a depth that I can't. And that's the kind of stuff that you get on the Electromaker YouTube channel. You get this show, you get occasional deep dive videos from Robin and stuff like that. We're not going to be making loads of notifications appear. And again, this is a great way of showing YouTube that you really want this to see the show when it comes out and anything that's on the channel. And the other thing that you can do is like the video. I know it's annoying when YouTubers ask for likes, but it makes a difference. The like button is not just there to let you know, to let us know that you like the video. It also lets YouTube know it, and the chances of them showing it to other people is much greater then. However, if you would like to support the show financially, you can do that also. We don't have a Patreon, we don't put adverts on our videos, instead we have a shop. And so, anything from any of the people you see scrolling across the top of the screen are the things that we stock. And if you are looking for something for your next hobby project, or maybe even a larger scale industrial prototyping project, we have a surprisingly large array of stuff you can get from our shop. It's all on the Electromaker website, electromaker.io. You can look under the shop tab for things to buy. This is also where you can find links to our projects page. And remember, we're picking 3 projects every month to win prizes now, so if you are working on stuff, it's definitely worth documenting it. You can also find links out here from here to our Discord server, and of course this is where the blog is as well. Anyhow, thank you for your time. Let's get back to the show. So a couple of weeks ago on the show, I talked about the Blues wireless note card, and in case you missed it, it is a wonderful little Edge device. It's got an Edge pin device and it's got GPS on it. It also comes with a baseboard and a microcontroller that goes with it. And there's a fantastic article written by Robin on the Electromaker website that goes through the entire thing. He reviewed it, and long story short, as an engineer who's worked with a lot of embedded gear, he absolutely loved it. And the short time I've had to fiddle with it too, I've really enjoyed working with it as well. Long story short, a couple of weeks ago we started a competition for one of you Electromaker viewers to win that particular Blues note card that I have that I'm going to send out to you, and it is time to choose that winner. And the winner is Ujval Rathod, and apologies, I'm probably really not pronouncing that name properly. But the comment was they want to make a project where they'd use these devices to create a smart helmet that can detect a human fall and condition monitoring. It can send real-time locations of the user to a cloud platform to display on the map. This just seemed like a really fantastic use for an always-on, low-powered GPS unit. Because, of course, you can use MCUs, you can attach it to an MCU, or it can be standalone, but presumably this would also be using an IMU to actually detect a fall and see obviously there's only a certain amount of trauma a head should go through before you should call the emergency services, and it's a really interesting project. I look forward to seeing it, and please do write it up on the Electromaker website when you do start prototyping this idea. But for now, congratulations. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this out to you, and I very much doubt this is the last time we'll be giving something from Blues Wireless away on the show. It's a new company to me. I hadn't really heard of them until quite recently, but their stuff is so easy to use and it's really nicely designed. I'm sure we'll be coming back to them. But we have plenty of other contests coming up too. We have some special contests in the next few weeks. We also have the good old classic mystery box contest. So there's plenty of stuff to give away if you didn't win this one. Commiserations. But yeah, congratulations, Utah. We'll be getting this out to you soon. Now, we're coming back to the Thingy 91 on the show, and we talked about it quite a bit because we've reviewed it, and we have a contest called Make It Smart that we're running with Nordic Semiconductor to actually win $1,000 in cash for making a good project using the Thingy 91 and Edge AI. Edge Impulse are also giving away an Oculus Quest 2, and if you wanted to be in that competition but didn't manage to get your hands on a Thingy 91, there's another way you can do that now. And that is because IoT Creators are giving away 1,000 Nordic Thingy 91 development kits. It's very simple. All you need to do is go to the website and register in these boxes, and you could win one. Which means that not only do you win a Thingy 91, which I've been very open about. It's one of my favorite dev kits that's come out in years. I love it. It's a really, really compact box which has a cellular IoT, a bunch of sensors on it, a really nice little rubberized plastic case, and a battery in it already. It's fantastic. And yeah, if you win one of these, then you'll have a Thingy 91, but also you should get it in time to enter our contest if you would really like to. Just as a quick reminder, this is the Make It Smart with Nordic Thingy 91 contest that we're running right now. And yes, as you can see, well, I'm hiding it right now. There is a $1,000 prize for the winner, $750 prize for second, and $500 for third. And all of the runners-up get $50 Amazon gift vouchers as well. And as I previously mentioned, Edge Impulse are giving away an Oculus Quest 2 as well. This is a wild contest. So I will leave a link to the IoT Dev Kits giveaway in the description of the video. All you need to do is fill out here and say what you want to connect and where you're based. And you will be entered into the prize draw to win one of 1,000 Thingy 91 kits. We're moving on to a project on the Electromaker website now that really caught my eye because it is an LED matrix project, but the way it's been approached I find really wonderful, because this isn't just getting an LED matrix up and running and showing some things on it. This is someone who spent the time to make a library that works specifically well with larger LED displays and has actually written or rewritten a bunch of retro games for it. So this project is from Electromaker community member DataGod, who basically has taken an Adafruit 64x32 RGB LED panel and a driver for it, and is using a Raspberry Pi 3 in order to write to it. But what makes this interesting is the libraries that he's written in order to do that. So these videos on the page give a full description, and in fact I would advise going and watching them because DataGod actually gives a really thorough look at how this all works. But essentially this is a remake of, or an inspired by, of Defender, which is an old Atari classic. And as you can see, it looks kind of amazing. This is an LED display, but because of the parallax effect and the fact that some of the stars are dimmer than the others, it really does look quite compelling. It looks better than you would expect a 64x32 grid to look. So the rest of the project goes into great detail as to how this all works, and of course there's links out to his code as well as the code used to get the LED matrix running as it is. But just to get this running the way it is on a Raspberry Pi 3 is really nice. Porting games over to this specific system, which is a 62x32 display, is not something that's easy, and by going one step further and creating a bunch of your own library functions, it's a really in-depth project, and you can tell a lot of time has been spent on it. So yeah, head over to the link in the description. There's a lot of videos there of this all working, and if you want to make it yourself, of course, there are links to all of the bits that you will need just up here. I actually have one of these 62 by 32 RGB matrix panels, and they're really cheap to get. They're just not so easy to drive, and this gets past it by using one of the Adafruit RGB matrix hats for Raspberry Pi. It's a really good entry point into those professional Hub 7 displays. I think I might have meant Hub 75. It's been so long since I bought my panels, I forgot what I searched for to get it. But yeah, there's a bunch of different LED standards, but I think Hub 75 is the one that's most used. And as you can see here, there are several examples of being able to get large matrices of LEDs for relatively decent prices. And once you have one of these things, you just need to drive it. In this project, he uses the Raspberry Pi hat for it, but you can also use an ESP32. They're great things to start fiddling with. But this project is an example of what you can do if you spend years really getting to know something and writing your own libraries in order to make it work the way you want to, because this looks way better than you would expect it to for just a 64 by 32 array of LEDs. Moving over to the LOLIN C3 Mini. Now this is on the always fantastic CNX software, but this is an ESP32 C3 board. And I remember a while ago on the show we talked about the C3. This is the first RISC-V chip from Espressif. It's kind of exciting to have the ESP32, which is that well-known, everybody can use it, hobbyists and professionals alike. There's so much documentation about it. And now there's a RISC-V version, which makes it a lot more accessible to everybody, especially considering this little board with its USB-C connector and its through holes, its very familiar shape, is only $4. And of course, what with the shape being so familiar, if you ever used the Wemos D1, the very popular ESP8266 board, then any shields you have, anything that you're working with it, this is a drop-in replacement for it. I think it even works at all the same voltage values, but do not quote me on that. I don't want you to put this into your project and fry something, but I'm fairly sure it is a drop-in replacement. There's a lot more details here on the CNX site than I have time to go into, which is obviously why I want to link this, because it's such a thorough look at this new little board. But if you really are you see this, you hear, okay, RISC-V in the Wemos D1 footprint, wireless board, which is with an ESP32C3 on it. I want it. Down the bottom here, there is a link straight out to the AliExpress page where you can buy them. Although right now it's being blocked for ad blocking reasons. There we go. $4.88. It's such a cheap little thing. And as previously mentioned, if you have any of these stackable shields that work with the Wemos D1, they are a stand-in replacement for the Wemos C3, I think. I don't want to say that and be absolutely sure of it, because it's worth just being absolutely sure before you take the plunge. But there's a lot of details about it just here, and yeah, they're just it's such a lovely form factor in and of itself. But to have one of these which has a RISC-V core and USB-C for programming as well as powering, it's just such a lovely little board. It's the kind of thing that I can see myself getting a few of just to fiddle with, because they are so cheap. It's a really good way to learn. And finally this week, a little teaser of a project that will probably be coming soon from Mukesh Sankla. I mean, the project is clearly finished, look at it. But this is something that hasn't been written up yet. This is just a tweet from him. Now, we featured Mukesh on the show before. He makes some very lovely things, and he's documented some of them on the Electromaker website. I'm hoping he does that with this too. But this is one of those sort of like holy grail projects that I think everyone who gets into maker culture thinks about doing at some time, and that is making a bench power supply out of an old computer power supply. And as it stands right now, that's just exactly what it says here. DIY bench power supply made out of old CPU SMPS. But yeah, what's notable about it is how amazing it looks. It really does look like a professional thing. You can see that this is a 3D printed case. And again, I say this so often, it looks very, very professional, but clearly still made by the maker, which I love. There's a line there where it's not produced, but it's not just a bunch of stuff on a breadboard. It's been put together in a way that actually looks like it could be something that was produced. Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of the things I like. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this being having a write-up. For now, I just wanted to highlight it in case you're not already familiar. That's Mukesh's Twitter page, and he's just an interesting maker to follow. He's someone that we featured on the show before, and when I saw this on Twitter, I thought, oh yeah, that's definitely worth a shout-out, because this is also a great beginner project. And I want to say that with a caveat. It's a great beginner project, but by the same token, it's real electricity. You want to be careful. You can really mess yourself up with it. But in terms of complexity, it is a project that is not so hard to take on. Just make sure you know what you are doing before you mess with any mains electricity. So that was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all of you that are supporting this show on YouTube by doing all the YouTube stuff, and those of you that have been buying things from the shop as well. We'll be back next week with a regular show. If there's anything specific in Arduino Week you saw that you thought was amazing, please do leave it in the comments to this video, because I'd like to do a roundup on Arduino Week after the fact so we can look back on all of those things. And as I mentioned before as well, if there's anything in the show that you have any particular expertise in and you would like to add to that, or just say that I'm playing wrong, please do put that in the comment section below as well. I always like to hear the different perspectives of what people are working on. I know there are people in the industry that watch this show, and I know that there are people just starting with the hobby that watch this show, and I'd love to hear your perspective. Anyway, for now, I hope you have a safe, fun, and creative week, and I will see you in the next show.